Well, we are now going to Toronto, Ontario, where we are tuning in to Paul Klein.
And Joanne
think, I think, hello. And I think Paul has been one of these incredibly dedicated people to bring awareness to, and even before I think CSR was even, in the world of business, this corporate social responsibility. And you have been really going for it for, I think, most of your career to really get something that is now very commonplace, but you were spearheading it far before it was even a term. So this is incredible that you are here with us. Paul is a globally recognized authority in helping businesses benefit from solving social problems. In 2001, Paul founded Impakt, a B Corp that has helped corporations to improve the impact of their investments in social change. Impakt has also helped leading nonprofit organizations to understand their social purpose. And in 2019, Paul established the Impakt Foundation for Social Change. It's a registered charitable organization with a mission of helping refugees and newcomers find pathways to employment in Canada. Paul recently published an incredible book called Change for Good, an action-oriented approach for businesses to benefit from solving the world's most urgent problems. And this was published by ECW Press in March of 2022. And Paul, I believe, is going to be sharing with us today the Taylor Project, which is an example of Impakt Foundation's work. It is an incredible immigration story during 1948, but which still holds value for today. So Paul, welcome. I hand the basket over to you and we jump in.
Thank you. And can you see me?
Yes.
Okay, that's great. Fortunately, I can't see myself, but that's all. That's better. Anyway, it's such a. I feel like I'm, an underachiever here, but with all of you. So it's just I don't even know what to say. Really, the stories that we've heard are just incredible, and in our own way, most of the work we do is sort of, in terms of social change, a little bit indirect, because we're doing this work for other people. However, had the real good fortune and honor to have been involved directly in some projects, and what I'm going to tell you about today, the Taylor Project, maybe intersects a little bit with what we've heard already today. I'm going to show you a little film that we did about the Taylor Project, but I'll just give you the backstory first, which was there was a man named Larry Enkin who was from here, and his father had a very large clothing factory in Hamilton. And Larry was an amazing person who I got to know when I started Impakt, and who very kindly agreed to be a mentor to me. And so I saw him, I started Impakt in 2001. I would get together with this incredible guy, Larry, who was retired by then, many times a year. And he was just was a great listener, always asked incredible questions and so on. And I became very close to him. And in 2018, I think, he told me this story. And the story was that his father and a group of other people, leaders from the garment industry in Canada, in 1947, actually, after the Second World War ended, got together and recognized that there were literally 2 or so million Jewish, not all Jewish people, but many Jewish people in DP camps in Europe after the Holocaust ended. So the Holocaust ended, these people were liberated from the concentration camps and ended up in DP camps. And there was, the situation there was, if you read about it, was more or less hopeless for these people. Anyway, these people, these leaders, Larry's father, these other leaders from the garment industry thought, what if we could bring these people, some of the people from DP camps to Canada and give them jobs in our businesses? And so they convinced the government at the time that there was a labor shortage in the garment industry. And then, and based on that, the Canadian government allowed these people to go to Europe and select tailors from DP camps to bring them to Canada. The thing is that there really was no labor shortage. This was a way of convincing the government to make this, to let this happen, because at that time, there was no way that the Canadian government would have let Jews come into Canada. And it was just 10 years after I forgot the incident now, but this incident where the ship was turned away from Canada because it was had Jews on it. Anyway, this was the context at the time. These people went over. They went to the DP camps. They did a rudimentary test for people with a high bias to bringing people into Canada. But so there were tailors, some were not tailors, but these people came to Canada, and the main innovation, today we might say social innovation of the whole thing, was that unlike today, where people are coming to Canada, in fact, there are far more refugees coming to Canada than there were after the Second World War, but they don't have jobs today. So these people were brought to Canada, given jobs, they had found places to stay, and they were supported, and they were able to be successful and gain their own hope back in a way that probably never would have happened afterwards. So I'm going to tell you a little more about this, but first I'm going to show a film that we did that will tell you about this much better than I can. Let's see. Can everybody see this?
It's a black screen right now, Paul. I don't know if that's part of it. It could be.
1 second here. Close this. Can you see this?
Yeah.
And hear it?
Yes.
Right.
My father was a tailor, all his brothers were a tailor. I told my father, I don't want to be a tailor. When the war broke out, I had no choice. I knew how to sew and make uniforms, so I wasn't starving. My mother and father, they went somewhere else, they liquidated them. I survived Auschwitz because of my father. I was just lucky, just luck.
A letter from my father, Max Entgen, to my family. What I have seen since I arrived in Europe, particularly since coming to Germany, has shaken me to the core. Internment camps. And yet these people still have the will to survive.
But just imagine, these people are living in a refugee camp. It used to be a concentration camp. They're trying to rebuild their lives, let alone their souls. Somebody comes into that place and says, hey, if you're a tailor, we can bring you to Canada. Can you imagine hearing those words? Canada, getting out of here. I can make a life for myself. This isn't the end of the road. These are people who had no hope. They'd lost everything. The only thing they didn't lose was their lives, but their spirits and their families were gone. They had seen terrible things. And the Taylor Project gave them hope that they could start their lives again. And that's what it did for my parents.
These are the letters from my grandfather. Most of them start the same way, Dear Martin. And actually, he signs them off Papa Dave, which is what we called him. Dear Martin, in late December 1947, I left Southampton for Canada aboard the SS Queen Mary, returning home from Germany and Austria, where I'd been sent by the Canadian government in a team of 5 representatives of management and labor. We were commissioned to examine some 15,000 inmates of Hitler's concentration camps and process 2,500 tailors with their families for immigration into Canada as part of a worldwide movement to empty the DP camps as soon as possible.
My father and the other members of the team went to as many DP camps as possible to give them hope that possibly they could find a way out of those DP camps, finally, into another country.
So I applied. The test was a little nothing. They just want to know if you could hold the needle on the thimble, and if you saw a few, that's it. It was very easy, nothing at all.
My father told his brother, they need tailors in Canada. Let's go, we're gonna sign up. And his brother said, we're not tailors. And my father said, don't matter, let's put our name on a list. He couldn't sew at all. So he paid somebody to write the exam. And it was just the next step towards survival. How do I get out of here? He gave the man his coordinates, how old he was, what his birthday is. His name is Jonas Schlanger. As he said, I was looking in the window, watching the guy. He'd take a cotton and he put it through the needle. Like this, I know, I come to Canada. When he got here, they wanted to assign him to a sweatshop. And he said, but I'm not a tailor. And they said, well, how did you get here? With the ship, just like everybody else.
The boat was terrible. Everybody was sick. Everybody was throwing up. Then I came to Montreal and I started to work in the factory. Well, I'll tell you the truth, I was happy to come to Canada and I was happy to be here. And I met a nice girl. I was making a living, had a nice family. I bought a little duplex, and till I retired, I'm okay. I love you too, bye. When I came to Canada, off the boat, I didn't have anything, not one penny.
When I think about having nothing and coming here with nothing, except for maybe my mother's gold ring and my father's gold ring on their fingers, that they went forward. When he got here, he convinced a bank manager to give him a loan, and he started a fish business. Of course, he knew nothing about fish either, just like he didn't know anything about tailoring. But he walked into a place in Kensington Market and put on an apron and walked behind the counter and told the guy, I need to learn about fish. I'm not leaving. You tell me.
Kensington Market, which is the historic heart of the Jewish community in Toronto. It's where the community built its places of worship, its synagogues. Always thought it's sort of interesting that I landed here, just a few blocks from Kensington Market. And when I look out my windows, I can see the tailor factories where a lot of this history takes place. It is a very Canadian story about overcoming adversity and building new lives.
I believe all of our experiences become who we are. Of course, my mother and father's experiences in the war impacted on how I see the world. And my art expresses how I see the world. I think the colors are deceptive. I think the sadness of my history is inside me, but I don't express it in sadness. I express it in the joy of color and the celebration of being here.
To the best of our knowledge, there ended up to be 2,000 families that were able to come to Canada. And families that arrived, and many of them had 2 and 3 children. We were astounded to see what levels of education and competence and contribution to Canada they in turn have made to this country. I am extremely proud of my father, as I was anyways, but in this direction, he was a great citizen and he did a great service to the Jewish community and ultimately to Canada.
Well, if it wasn't for the Taylor Project, what would this country be missing? All these hardworking immigrants who started again, and like my parents, who were good citizens and kind people. Where would we be? We wouldn't be here. The bottom line is, where would we be?
Anyway, just stop at the credits. So I hope, that I actually haven't watched this for a while, and it really is something. But it really, for me, just brings back a couple of memories. One is, as I said, this all started because I was in Larry Ankin's apartment. He told me about this story, and he said to me, he said, "Well, do you think that we could find these people? Like, get there somehow, find their stories. Maybe we could write a book." And this happened, as I said, in 1948, and this was in 2018. I said, I don't know, I really, and this is quite a departure from the work that we were doing as well. But it was such an incredible thing that he told me, and I, of course, had never heard about it. I said, well, we'll try, and so we started. A woman who was working with us, Nicole, and myself, she started to go through obituaries. We're looking now to see if we can find out any record of these people. No luck, and the people have changed their names. Many of these people are no longer alive. We get in touch with the Canadian Ontario Jewish Archives, and they say, well, maybe if there's anyone who's going to have this information, you should get in touch with the Canadian Jewish Archives in Montreal. So in January that year, I guess I remember maybe it was 2018 then, Larry Ankin, who was then 91 years old, I think, we go to Montreal and we go to the Canadian Jewish Archives. We're down there in the basement of this building, and they were talking about this, and this one says, we know about this. She said, wait here. So they go in the back and they start bringing these boxes out, and the boxes had these file folders in them, one for every ship that had come to Canada. And in these folders, there were these lists of the passengers, and it was all there. And we were like, oh my God, this is and no one had seen this before. And so then we thought, okay, this is possible now. Had their names, had where they came from, had where they came to in Canada, what factory they were supposed to go to. The whole thing was there. And then they said, there's only one thing: you can't actually contact anybody. So privacy. 100-year privacy, law here. You can't reach out to these people. And so then what do we do? And my colleague Nicole, actually, it was her idea. She said, well, why don't we see if we'll start a website. We'll see if we can get some. I said, yeah, maybe someone will write a story about this and see if we can get people to contact us. So, which is what we did. And eventually people started. We had a story, the Toronto Star, I think, I can't remember, a number of different newspapers, Canadian Jewish News did a story about this. And we started to hear from people. It was incredible. And, eventually we started, we were going to meet with these people. We were, we didn't even know exactly where the whole thing was going for a while. But then we realized, well, maybe there's a book here of their stories. So we started going to meet with these people. Larry actually came to a lot of these meetings himself. We heard their stories, and ultimately, three things happened out of all this. Number one is on Holocaust Remembrance Day in 2019, we had an event at Holy Blossom Temple in Canada, in Toronto, where we brought together the families that were able to come, people who told their stories to us, other people. So these people actually met their peers from this project for the first time since 1948. They hadn't known each other. It was incredible. And the Prime Minister came, and also, as this started with this research, as kind of research, one of the things that we realized when we were doing this, hearing these stories, and we started thinking about, well, what is the situation like today? Who's coming here to Canada today? What are their professions? Where are they working? So we, at the same time as we were collecting stories from the Taylor Project families, we were starting to kind of lean into understanding the situation with refugees today. And we found out that there are significant numbers of refugees coming to Canada who are tailors. And we started to get in touch with them as well. And we thought, maybe we could start a social enterprise where we could have tailors today making clothing that would benefit other refugees some way, so the whole idea came of starting a clothing business, actually. And in the end, we of course knew nothing about a clothing business. We had no time to be able to say, well, this is very, very difficult to do, as I heard from some of you here. But we did have, it ultimately was not successful, but we did have a number of refugees today making clothes, and we did, make a whole bunch of shirts, and it became sort of more symbolic rather than a real business. But I just wanted to show you a couple of pictures here, if I can share the screen again. Let's see. Can people see this?
Yes.
Yeah, hang on, let me see if I can make this bigger. So this is a picture that was taken at Holy Blossom Temple, with the event with all the Taylor Project families. And this is obviously the Prime Minister with an amazing man named Mohammed, who is a refugee to Canada. And they're holding a box which has a Taylor Project shirt in it. That was one of the shirts that was made, was given to the Prime Minister. Anyway, it was, so at the end of this evening, it was just an incredible culmination of not just the stories from the past, but this man's experience today, and who, and if you want to talk about hope, he was Mohammed. It was incredible for him, to come to Canada as a refugee, being involved with this project that was kind of reflecting the similar situation that people had in 1948, and then being on stage with the Prime Minister and giving him this shirt that he made. And then this is the book that was published that has the stories of the Taylor Project families. There's about 20 stories in there, and they're all incredible. And then finally, the third thing that came out of that one conversation in Larry's apartment was we wanted to keep this work going. And eventually in 2019, as Cynthia said, we started this charitable organization called the Impakt Foundation for Social Change, which exists to provide employment for refugees and other newcomers today. And this is a picture of someone who's employed by an organization called Canada Sportswear, who is run by the children of one of the original Taylor Project families. He started that business when he came to Canada. The children still run it. Now he's hiring refugees today. And this is a shot. They were one of the projects that were doing was making face masks early on in the pandemic. So how do we stop this? That's what happened. And anyway, as I said, I feel a great honor to have been a part of this. Sadly, Larry Enkin died, I guess it was last year. But partly this was a legacy to him and his family for the incredible work they had done. So really, that was also, I think all of us felt so grateful that we had been able to do this for him and, of course, all those families. Hope it's of interest. Thanks for letting me share that, Cynthia.
Wow, Paul, it's an incredible, moving, inspiring story of survival through tailorship and the making of community. So,
well, if we want to be local and making things on our doorstep, this is one of the ways to go. Really, I think on a worldwide scale. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
thank you, Paul. And hello, Joanne.